He's a good boy. It's a me again. Pajama pants and black socks, dude. Alrighty. You know what I noticed yesterday? When I was renaming the stream, because all of my streams are named the same so that I don't have to, like, every time I'm walking like this, rename 3 different streams, one of which I can only do through the dashboard on the website itself. That would be Kick, of course. So it's a giant pain in the ass, there's really no time for it, right? I'm on the move already. I don't have the time to stop and just stand here 5 minutes tapping my stupid fat thumbs and coming up with whatever, for each time I feel like streaming on the go like this. Anyway, so when I was renaming the stream on YouTube, it's the only platform that I actually kind of care about right now. I don't even know if you can rename streams like VODs on Kick. Maybe you can. Anyway, I noticed that the stream started pretty much exactly as I pressed start here. So, mileage apparently varies of when you use the Prism multi-stream function. Like if sometimes it seems that the first couple of minutes kind of get sucked into the ether somewhere. Sometimes everything seems to work. Or maybe it varies from platform to platform. I don't know. Maybe on Kick a few minutes will be missing, but on YouTube it will be okay. And maybe that's how it's been always. And I just never remembered it. But yeah, if you're watching this as a VOD, I highly recommend you do it on YouTube, because if you do it on Kick, these tend to be long videos. You put it on pause, decide to finish it later, come back to it tomorrow, it may not be there, right? On YouTube, as of now at least, as far as we know, it stays forever. I remember how surprised I was when Dr. Disrespect, moved to YouTube, and his 6, 8, 10 hour long streams would just stay there forever. YouTube is the one constantly bitching that they run out of space and they have to come up with new compression algorithms, especially for all the content. And that's why so many of the older content on YouTube, by the way, either does not load properly or takes forever to load for some reason. Have you ever noticed that? Or suddenly appears in quality significantly lower than it should be. It's because they come up with new compression algorithms and they recompress older material using that compression also. So it's old compression, new compression on top of the older compression, and completely destroys quality of some of the older videos. It's not as bad as what Instagram does. If you're not aware what Instagram does, I have a whole Patreon post about it, with receipts and everything. I think it's 90 days, so 3 months, or maybe 60. It's either 2 months or 3 months after you upload. I assume it only applies to videos, because photos get recompressed by Instagram anyway. So once a photo, even if it's a big photo, once it's uploaded to Instagram once it's uploaded to Instagram, it's recompressed anyway. So it can only be so big, really. It probably isn't. But videos, obviously, in order to be in good quality, need to not be compressed all that much. And apparently Instagram, Meta, multiple years ago, realized that unlike YouTube, which mostly combats the problem of there's just like way too much content by, you know, sinking their literally infinite Google money into, you know, data centers. Well, Meta, you know, being obviously led by the young visionary, they decided to, we're just going to compress to literally all hell, like 240p basically, and like audio will probably go, well, I don't know if they do anything to audio, but all the videos that you uploaded to your Instagram, not as stories that like go away, no, like permanent, whatever the fuck they call it, right? Like posts, like when you post video on Instagram, not as a like Snapchat thing that disappears in 24 hours. No, like properly. I don't know, the terminology is all fucked between all different platforms, so like I don't Zoom speak, you know? If you Zoomy speak, I don't, and I don't care to. Because Zoomers don't matter. I'm sorry, guys. You don't. You're too self-isolating. You literally do not integrate with any other generation. Even millennials don't understand you. You know, for a while, until you came along, millennials and Gen X at least kind of like got along, you know. Well, anyway, so if it sounds like I disrespect, you know, if I kind of like, if I condescend when speak about Instagram, it's because I just honestly I don't care. Those like Instagram confused me even when it like came out originally, even before Facebook bought it. I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, why wouldn't you just use Twitter if you were to do something like this? So I have to have an image to share every time I want to post something? No, in fact, image is the thing that you post and share. Like, I don't know, it's just so confusing. Anyway, so if you thought that you could just upload something on Instagram and it will be there, no, it will not be there. I promise you. Upload a video that you'd love to have as kind of like, you know, publicly available thing that you did or whatever. Come back to it in either 60 days. If in 60 days it will still be there, come back to it in 90. You will be surprised. The video will still be there. The thumbnail of the video will still be there. Crisp, beautiful thumbnail. But once you actually click on the video, once you actually start the playback, you will notice immediately that it's like 280p. It's borderline unwatchable. I kid you not. Yep, Instagram compresses to all hell. Completely destroys quality of everything uploaded to it that's older than either 2 or 3 months. Yep. So you cannot even use Instagram as like a portfolio. If you're an artist, an animator, a filmmaker for that matter, you know, if maybe you do video, like movie, you know, videos. If you, what do I call it? Jesus Christ. Music videos. If you do music videos, if you do like trailers, if you do anything, commercials, animations, like you just cannot use Instagram. No, because you will think, oh, Instagram is such a wonderful place to have as a portfolio because everyone uses it, and that's the place to be, right? Nope. No, it's not. Everything you upload to Instagram in just a few months becomes a blurry piece of shit. You cannot show it to anyone. And the thing is that what I just told you is a bit of a secret. Like, not a lot of people actually know about that. So somebody finds your Instagram, if you are like an animator, for example, and they look up your shit and they'll be like, why does everything look so bad? Like, this looks like shit. Is that dude like some kind of moron? He doesn't know how to properly like upload video? Like he exports on 280p? Like, what the hell is wrong with this dude? Nah, I'm not gonna contract him. I'm not even gonna bother like asking, what the hell is this? Like, this is just no good. It's a terrible look. It makes horrible. first impression, and yeah, like most people will not understand. Like now I know, so if I find someone's portfolio on Instagram and it's all blurry as fuck, right, everything that wasn't uploaded super recently is in super low quality, I understand why. All right, but I will probably look for kind of like, you know, the mirroring kind of portfolio on something like Instagram, oh sorry, something like YouTube of the same person. But like normies will not understand. So absolutely, guys, do not under any circumstances, under any circumcisions, use Instagram as your portfolio if your content, your material is in any kind of like video form. And yeah, oof, fun times. Now, I don't even remember. I don't even remember why I started talking about all that stuff. Oh, well, yeah, stuff doesn't disappear, right, from YouTube, while Instagram somehow, you know, doesn't even know how to keep having space other than just like keep compressing stuff. But YouTube is still, you know, everything is on YouTube, always. It never goes away. It's like magic, almost. Who are we hunting here, Boo Boo? No, let's be careful. Boo, it could literally be like a skunk. So, damn it, so many insects today. Come on, Boo. Listen, I don't mind if it's a bunny, alright, but it could be like a skunk. Well, it doesn't smell particularly skunky. We would like smell it first probably before. Is this? No. Well, you guys definitely wouldn't see anything with like compression of the stream. I cannot see anything. Hopefully it's a bunny, but well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. Easy, boo. Easy. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, as I was renaming shit, I noticed that actually everything seems to be in sync. So I don't know what happened. Maybe when I decided that the bug of not all the platforms in the multi-stream array kind of like actually start from like the first minute, from the start of the stream on my end, that some of them like actually go online with a bit of a delay, kind of like skipping whatever is happening on stream during that delay. I don't know. Could be that I just discovered that what I thought was a bit of a fact when I was just the connection was patchy. You know, perhaps I was still over at the house side and my Wi-Fi was on, so it was like really patchy and glitchy. But then I do remember only one platform being affected, and like some other platform was not. You happy with yourself? So yeah, so that I no longer have to think about it. I haven't finished it. I played it for like a day and a half while I was dog sitting the other week. Max Payne 2015, Mad Max 2015 game. Strangely enough, I first thought of that game almost like half a year ago. I was like, I thought maybe I should check it out finally. And as it happens, until then I knew about it, but I was not interested in it at all. You know, I'm one of those people, like I get no compulsion to just like buy something when like I see it and it's new. You know, just like, oh, Mad Max, you know, came out. I need to play it desperately because it's new. I don't get that. That's one of the perks of being old and already experiencing all the great stuff. And you know, modern slop isn't really impressing me all that much. But anyway, suddenly that I kind of remembered of the game. I remembered it, and I started noticing that actually quite a lot of people just randomly started to talk about it. It's almost like the universe depends on your perception or your thoughts. Yeah, a bunch of people praise this game now. By a bunch of people, this game is now considered a bit of a overlooked jam of a kind. A yam jam, perhaps. I don't know. So yeah, I played it, and well, one thing I would like to start with, probably. One really good thing about the universe of the in-game universe of that particular instance of the Mad Max universe. The interesting thing is that there was an attempt to give it context. There was an attempt to make it an actual setting. Because, well, to make it an actual universe, rather. Because the universe of Mad Max isn't an actual universe. It's a setting, it's a scene, if you will. There's little to no continuity, there's little to no sense. Mad Max himself isn't even an eternal hero type of thing. He's not Conan, who has his kind of like origin story, and then we know where his story kind of ends. But in between those 2 points, there could be fucking, centuries, potentially, because, well, Conan does not necessarily have to age, right, through magic or whatnot, or through becoming like the avatar of Crom. He may not actually be aging, for example. So you can literally squeeze like centuries worth of adventures, and in that kind of like a whole lifetime worth of time, for example, Conan may have become like a pirate king of a kind, right? And then he went to a desert type of setting and became kind of like a, like, you may traveled in time, you may travel into the fucking like year 2000 and became like a something whatever, known hero. But Conan is a real eternal hero. Like James Bond is a real eternal hero. Like James Bond, you can realistically think of any type of scenario you want to put him in and say, well, that's why such and such happens. Kind of like justify it at least a little bit, and it basically will work, right? Some eternal villains or monsters, if you will, work on the same principle, right? Like Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger, like you put Freddy Krueger anywhere and just say, this is why he's here. That's it. Like, don't think about it. That's it. Like, we have Freddy in space. We have Jason in space. Anyone seen Jason X, right? Like, Jason X isn't really about how the universe of Jason, came to the point where now we're in space. No, it's just that Jason now is in space. Like, that's it. That's the story. Like, don't think about it. You're not supposed to. And if you do, there's nothing to think of because there's no explanation, right? There is no lore behind it. But Jason, in and of himself, much like Freddy Krueger, for all intents and purposes, are basically real characters, right? They're not just archetypes. Well, although with Jason it kind of is, because Jason is essentially not he's not even a person, right? He's like a spirit. But still, the spirit is a character, right? Freddy Krueger is a real character. Freddy Krueger is not multiple people. All right. Well, except for the one where it's actually his glove that possesses people, but let's not talk about that. Right? James Bond is a real person. It's not just that the moniker like 007, like 007, is just ascribed to like the best agent at any current era, and then that person, we start referring to them as James Bond. Right? No, James Bond is a real person, right? It's just that he is a person across time. He's like Link, right? Link is technically also not a real hero. He's more of an archetype, right? He's like the hero that is needed, like the right hero at the wrong time or whatever. right? He is basically like the universe trying to correct itself, right? He's summoned by destiny. He's summoned by faith, to correct the wrongs of the current timeline, so to speak. He's not necessarily... He's more of a... If anything, Link is more of a kind of like... If he is a real person, he's not of this world. He is of some kind of like Valhalla plane, and he's summoned from there back into the material world, at certain points in history to like correct things, and then he goes away again. So in that sense, he's one continuous hero. But if we think of him as like someone who's summoned out of nowhere, essentially, yeah, and some Links do have histories of like being real people, but then again, like that's not the same Link. So Link is more of an archetype than an eternal hero type of entity. James Bond, though, is a real person, right? He's the same person across all of his stories. So he is an eternal hero. Conan is the same person across all of his stories. It's not just an archetype. It's not a title. Mad Max, though, Mad Max is basically a title. Mad Max is not a real person. Although you might say, no, what are you saying? Like, we have Mad Max 1, right? That kind of like establishes the backstory of the character, and that backstory is more or less consistent across all the other iterations, all the other movies and whatnot. Yeah, but I think it's just for flair. Between different Mad Max stories, there is no acknowledging of continuity. There is no acknowledging of... There are giant plot holes if you're going to think about it like that, because in the universe of every single Mad Max past one, it's very obvious that the apocalypse happened like centuries ago, right? Or at least a century ago. Because we have a whole generation of like mutants, we have a whole generation of people who are very obviously like super barbaric people who invented their own religion, like, worshipping like engines and stuff like that. Their own kind of like mythology and so on. Like, it's very obvious that it's been like probably centuries, but I would say at least one would be necessary, right? It's been generations, okay, at the very least. And Mad Max is like the only person from the quote-unquote normal world who still remembers how things were. No, it's just there for a bit of a, I think, kind of, for the general continuity of the fact that Max is supposed to be a tortured character, right? He's supposed to be a character from whom everything was taken, so he has nothing to lose anymore. And the idea of Mad Max is that Mad Max is, in fact, not a character, it's a title. It's like the wrong person at the wrong time who manages to make a difference, right? Like, that's what Mad Max is. And the world of Mad Max, again, also isn't a real world. It's quite literally just a scene. There's a set of rules, and there's a set of ideas, and there is a little bit of a lore associated with the world, which I absolutely love. And that's one of the reasons why I love the universe, quote unquote, of Mad Max, although it's not a real universe. Again, it's a scene. But a better word would be stage. It's a stage. But there are hints across all iterations of this universe for something resembling lore. Like how, for example, people worship cars, and like technical manuals for engines are considered to be like sacred scriptures. Although simultaneously, obviously everything is taking place in Australia, right? And like people are obsessed with things like V8, for example. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything that I know of the automobile culture in Australia, from things like Top Gear, I don't think V8s even that big in Australia. Are they? it's pretty much it's a, you know, it's a very American thing. But like, whatever, I don't know. I know that Australia has their own like car manufacturers and stuff like that, so I don't even know if V8s are all that big in Australia, but maybe they are. But anyway, it seems that like everyone, you know, is looking for them, or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so it's funny how, like, you know, the cultures or the culture or whatever, you know, in Mad Max is very kind of like, obviously cars being worshipped, right? But well, you know, something like in something like Detroit, I would understand that, right? But like Australia, is Australia really all that big on like, I don't know, realistically, how many V8s even are there to go around? Like, considering how much of everything would be lost in the apocalypse, right? Like, all the cars are just, like, you know, junks with wheels and engines, you know, bolted on them. Well, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What matters is that in the game, they attempted to do something which I was fucking legitimately, honestly, I was amazed. And you wouldn't know it if you don't interact with the slop open world of the game, with the slop sandbox, slop box of Mad Max 2015. But they have those like historic artifacts, just one of the collectibles. And those artifacts are pretty much always just a photo with like a note written, like handwritten on the flip side. And it's weird because some of them are supposed to be actually directly related to like Max or his family. But I assume it's just like his psychosis like fucks with him. It's not supposed to be real anyway, because especially once you have played the actual game, it is super obvious that the apocalypse was like decades and centuries ago. All right, in the movies, you can argue that, well, it's just, you know, it's just such and such area, you know, the world may not even be all that long ago fucked up. Like, once, the way it's portrayed in the game, it's like, dude, it's beyond Fallout. It's like the world is gone and forgotten, you know. Anyway, they put those photographs, and most of them were from the period of time like during the apocalypse. So the apocalypse actually took like about a generation or so, I assume, to happen. And those photos, well, most of those photos are literally just like random photos from the like camera feeds of developers, you know, with a bit of filtering to make some of them a little bit creepy, or like there would literally be like a photo of a steak, right? And the memo, the note on the flip side of the photo, of the photograph, would imply that, oh, it's a human meat steak. Ooh, yeah, you just took a photo from your own phone of a steak that you ate yesterday, right? And like you made it into an art asset. It's very obviously cheap, right? But those stories and the way those stories are written, and they are very often like just very short stories. It would be like one sentence sometimes. Like, dude, like it would be like some kind of like, say, sign that basically just like says, you know, I don't know, we're out of water, don't come in or I'll shoot you, you know, stuff like that. So the way those notes and memos or whatever, well, it's more like notes, yeah, are written is actually sometimes pretty engaging. And it does paint a pretty interesting story, because those aren't just kind of like, notes from the old world, how things used to be. No, those are legitimately notes from the world during the apocalypse. And it paints a very interesting picture. It actually creates a kind of lore. It tells a kind of story. It actually builds a world out of nowhere. And that's something that the Mad Max universe never really had. Mad Max had a collection of scenarios, but it never had a cohesive lore, a cohesive timeline, to kind of like what exactly and how happened, right? You're not supposed to think about it even. But for something like game, that stuff legitimately matters, right? Because in the movie, in the movie we care about the characters who are on the screen and we care about what they do. But in a video game where you have a giant sandbox to run around or drive around rather and explore, more context is almost necessary, right? Because it's kind of like, well, okay, it's obviously post-apocalypse, but like what exactly happened? Like it's inevitable that people will be asking questions like that. And the game actually provides, it actually answers the call. It actually gives you some very interesting information. And I'm not sure if there are Mad Max books. I wouldn't be surprised if there were. But I certainly would not be interested in reading any of them. But what the video game did is honestly quite interesting. And I know for a fact it's definitely none of that was based on anything that you could find in the movies. None of the movies had basically any of the details that the video game did. Now, that being said, the rest of the game is actually very underwhelming. Most of the game, you would think, should have been played kind of like Fuel by Codemasters, if you remember that game. If you don't, you should probably check it out, because it's honestly one of a kind game. There's not a lot of games like that. In fact, there's pretty much none. Fuel is a pretty interesting, basically post-apocalyptic off-road, like sandbox racing game. And the way the car controls in Mad Max 2015 is not even remotely as good. It's pretty primitive, placeholder fake physics that, like, even Flat Out 2 understood it better. Flat Out 1 and 2 understood it better. There's no suspension play. Funnily enough, there is almost no traction problem at all. There's no drifting. There's no, you need to control the gas pedal so that, the wheels don't turn too much or whatever. For some reason, the whole thing takes place in a desert, right? And your car is stupidly raised. Your car is basically kind of like a truck, actually. It's like a mini truck. All of the cars are made like that. And your car is really, really raised, but guys, even cars that are raised like that, realistically, you wouldn't be able to drive through the fucking desert, in a car like that. You just wouldn't. Your car would get fucking stuck in the sand, in the first 10 seconds. In any car, even remotely like that. You just cannot. It is possible to drive through the desert, in a through a desert road. Yeah, okay, cool, I agree. But not through the actual dunes. You cannot just drive in the sand in a light vehicle like that. Even if you raise it, I'm sorry, no, you're just gonna get stuck almost immediately. Yeah, you do slow down a little bit, just like in Fuel, actually. In Fuel, you can 100% cut through, whatever you feel like you can cut through, you can. In between checkpoints in Fuel, because you don't have real circuits in Fuel. In fuel, you drive between checkpoints, and sometimes there's literally just one checkpoint, like, you know, whoever can get to the one last finish line first, whatever route you want to take it. Sometimes there are races like that. Other time there are races that race between checkpoints, but again, doesn't matter. Even if it's like many checkpoint race, still, however you feel like getting to the next checkpoint, however route, whichever one you want to take or create, you are absolutely free to like do whatever you want. But when you are like legitimately off-road, your car's like maximum speed, the maximum speed your car can do on a terrain that isn't like an officially recognized road is limited. It's maybe something like 70% of your car's actual top speed. So you can actually still go pretty fast, right? But noticeably slower. And in Mad Max it works the same way, safe, you know, for the part where there's no real physics in the game. There's no suspension play. There is no real, you know, tire traction. There's no real weight to your car at all. Your car is basically magnetized to the ground, you know. It slips a little bit, but whatever. There isn't even handbrake. That I do not understand. Like, yeah, I get it that handbrake, if you want to do like a handbrake turn in literal like sand, you know, where your car is basically, you know, if you take your foot off the gas, your car will stop anyway. You know, there's not a lot of handbrake turns you can do in an environment where your car is only moving forward. Because you're accelerating. The second you stop, your car will stop immediately. You know, your car will get stuck the next second. But that's not how the quote-unquote physics, you know, that's not how the emulated physics work in the game at all. They work like you're just kind of like slipping and sliding, you know, it's like no big deal. Yeah, let's drive across desert, you know, that sand isn't even all that deep, don't worry about it. I just feel strange. You cannot do a burnout. You cannot do a burnout. You don't have handbrake. I'm not entirely sure what the developers were thinking, but I think one of the reasons why you may not have those abilities is because the game doesn't actually have real physics. Everything your car does that looks kind of physicsy, like how your car actually controls, for example, and, you know, all basic stuff like that, I assume that is all emulated physics, like the ones I did for my MEFU demo, for example. You can write your own quote-unquote physics. They wouldn't be real physics, but they would be a set of systems that would control something on a surface in a manner rather believable, rather on the super basic level at least, kind of making sense. And you can tune those very basic systems to kind of, you know, behave in a pseudo-realistic way, even. To a certain degree, of course, you know, like, don't take your definition of realism particularly far, but in a certain basic sense, you can tune a pretty rudimentary, pretty simple, just like kind of like set of commands that control how the object moves, you know. You can tune it to actually kind of work like real physics. And you might say, well, isn't like real physics basically just the same thing? No. Real physics have to do with things like the mass of the object is taken into consideration. Friction is taken into consideration and stuff like that. You know, like the vector of, well, basically velocity is taken into the equation, right? Because when you have a rudimentary system that controls an object and it emulates kind of like a physics behavior, well, that system still just moves the object forward, right? You basically tell the game engine, hey, you know, the object needs to move forward, right? Well, when it's controlled by an actual physics model, the object actually isn't being moved forward by the engine at all. The engine is being literally pushed forward by the force of the physics engine, and what it gains at that point is called velocity, and the velocity is that force behind the object that pushes it, that takes into consideration the mass of the object, the friction, right, between that object and the ground, and like yada yada yada. So it's a completely different system, and once you create kind of like a movement system based on physics, and once you create a movement system based on basically your own emulated physics, and you just compare the results, you know, of what you can achieve with one, what you can achieve with the other one, there is no way you can make one feel like the other, right? You cannot take anything that is actually controlled by a real physics model to make it feel kind of like snappy and arcadey, like you could with just basic direction, you know, like physics emulation model. Okay, Aini, I'm not sure what you're hunting for, but that's it. Enough. Aini, I've been looking at you. I have no idea what you're doing and what you're hunting for there, but whatever you're hunting, I don't want you to eat it or kill it, okay? Leave it. Yeah, so if you want to make something that is super snappy, super arcadey, almost feels like a fake racer from like the NES era, you know, you pretty much cannot do that using any kind of physics model. You have to make those fake physics yourself. And if you want to have something that actually feels like it has weight to it, I promise you, no matter how you tweak your own fake physics, like you might as well, you're gonna have to create real physics basically at that point. You might as well just use a real physics of whatever engine you're using, be it like a Havoc physics engine, you know, in whatever other engine you're using it, or the built-in physics of Unity, whatever. And of course, like a very good example, right, of a video game that has real physics would be Flat Out 1, 2, 3. Anything by Codemasters, and Fuel is the best example when we talk about Mad Max. And a game with no physics at all would a pretty good example be actually something like Burnout, for example. Do you remember how janky and just fake it feels in Burnout, either 3 or Revenge or Paradise for that matter, when you get air time, when you like jump in the car, how fake it feels when your car slams into the ground? Like, yeah, that's like absolute absence of physics, right? But do you remember how unpredictable and almost annoyingly bouncy your car is in Flat Out 1 and 2? Like, yeah, bitch, that's the difference I'm talking about. Of cars in Flat Out 1 and 2, especially in Flat Out 1, I think was overtuned. I think cars in Flat Out 1 were way too bouncy. But and there's whatchamacallit? There's oh, I'm gonna need my second hand. 1 second. I don't know if you can hear me still. In Flat Out 2, there's there are classes of cars that aren't as annoying, but in Flat Out 1 there's basically only one class of cars, and they are hella fucking annoying. Pretty much all of them are really bouncy. Games by Codemasters don't have the same problem, really. But again, think of like GTA San Andreas physics versus like the true crime games physics, or even Sleeping Dogs for that matter. I still remember the feeling I had when I sat in the car in Sleeping Dogs for the first time. I was so disgusted. Disgusted. When I first sat in the car in Sleeping Dogs, I almost like dropped the game right there. I just like paused the game and I thought to myself, I'm not sure I can play this. You know? So we all understand the difference between kind of like real physics, not realistic, but real physics and fake physics. And we have games like True Crime, for example, and you can clearly tell that those aren't real physics. It's just a set of kind of like commands for moving the object forward, right, in the engine itself, that are supposed to emulate the basic logic of how a vehicle operates, how a vehicle controls, how it moves. And we have something like, of course, like the GTA physics, where it is very obvious that there's a whole physical model actually responsible for how the vehicle behaves, right? There's suspension play, there's all kinds of friction, and there's all kinds of, well, again, suspension play. There's all kinds of bounciness. There's definitely different weight to different cars. And yeah, Mad Max 2015 legitimately goes the route of something like, well, it's funny because the company, you know, the engine, and the Warner Brothers, and it seems like everything who works with them, you know, they take inspiration from Ubisoft, right? Because it's like the whole engine and the whole game is basically just a reskin of Shadow of Mordor / War. So yeah, still, you know, taking inspiration from Ubisoft. So the car, your magnum opus in Mad Max 2015, pretty much controls like any car in like, what's that game? Watch Dogs. Ubisoft's Watch Dogs. So very much, I mean, it controls all right? In terms of you having control over it, yeah, you definitely do. But in terms of feel, well, it feels like garbage. And I don't understand why they didn't do better for a Mad Max game. It makes absolutely no sense to me. If they couldn't, right, they legitimately needed to fucking call Codemasters and be like, guys, we effing need your help, like right now. And Codemasters would have literally just been like, okay, yeah, sure, we can do it in like half a day. We'll basically just make it so that Magnum Opus feels like any similar car in Fuel. That good? Yeah, good, cool, right? And that would have been it. That would have been the solution. So yeah, car controls super trashy. But one last compliment I give the world is that once you get all the basic equipment, once you unlock all the basic equipment for the game, which takes about like fucking 10 hours. Once you unlock everything, basically the rocket launcher, once you get the rocket launcher, like you did it. That's the last thing you're gonna need. That's the last basic equipment that you need, you know, to be like fully operational. Convoy, like, what do they call it? Like road war? Like attacks on convoys, fuck, I wish the game had more of those. Become so goddamn fun. So goddamn fun. Yeah, the road war in the game where you attack the convoys is incredibly fun. Incredibly super fun. Oh, well, what else can I say? Okay. The slop part of the game. The story, I couldn't care more about the story. Even the ridiculous opening cutscene, honestly, didn't really make me feel much. Then there's a bit of a walking section. And once you actually get to control the character and whatnot, how should I put it? The game most definitely did not suck me in, okay? Like the way the opening hour of Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay did, for example. No, Mad Max honestly starts you kind of just sighing at the whole experience and being like, okay, I get it. When does the game start? Okay, all right, I get it, I see it, all right. You know, for the first 2-ish hours of Mad Max, you basically do that. You just sit and kind of waiting for the game to start, you know. And then it starts, and it's just your typical open world sandbox slop. In fact, there is so much optional bullshit garbage on the map. I honestly think the world of Mad Max 2015 could have been, I think, at least half its size, if not 30% of its size, and just actually properly designed, instead of being just open wasteland, you know. Have some actual level design elements to the world. Nope, there is none. And Aini, what the hell are you doing there? What are you doing there? You're eating something? I don't think you do, but it's hella suspicious. Oh, anyway. And all of those optional stuff, all of it is constantly forcing you to get out of your car and fight some dudes and then get back into your car. In fact, there's a whole kind of stronghold, outpost, you know, overtaking, you know, from all of the Ubisoft games, including all of the Warner Brother games, really. And guys, it's not so fun. Okay, it's not even remotely as fun as the game thinks it is, because when you're out of the car, 99% of the time you are out of it in order to do Batman combat. Yep, 100%. And I don't understand what they were thinking of. I mean, obviously they were thinking, you know, we're just gonna do the same thing we did for every other game, you know, made on this engine. But guys, that's not Mad Max at all. That's not Mad Max. Mad Max needs to be visceral and brutal, highly improvisational. And the Batman combat system is all about choreography and flow and smooth transitions. It completely lacks impact in the first place, but especially for something like Mad Max, it's just super, super unfit. It completely misinterprets what, especially hand-to-hand combat in Mad Max, needs to feel like. Not this careful, choreographed ballet, you know. That's not Mad Max. If you want to argue that that's The Witcher, okay. If you want to argue that that's whatever, Shadow of Mordor dude, okay. If you want to argue that that's Batman for some reason, all right. That's definitely not Mad Max, though. Most definitely not. And yeah, I commented on the fact that the world is very Ubi sloppy. In fact, it's a complete overkill. And there was, though, a very admirable and honestly almost immersive, I should say, attempt at world building through those memos, right? Which I thoroughly enjoyed those, despite the fact how stupid some of them looked, literally a photo of a developer, right? And then some story assigned to it. But one last thing I should say, why the sloppy open world could have been forgiven. Because, well, you could argue that, Well, it's a certain style of a game, right? Like an open, like a slop box, like a sandbox, slop box. Okay, cool. You know, you could argue that it's a certain type of a game, and if you want to make a game where, you know, people get to run around the world a lot and look at vistas, well, that's pretty much the type of game you need to be going for, right? Okay, all right, sure. Maybe I could buy that, and I could potentially just ignore the combat system, right? Or I can just kind of like learn not to be upset with it, like what I did with The Witcher 3, for example. Like The Witcher 3, I was playing literally like closing my eyes every time there was a combat system, you know. I just like looked away, you know, made a phone call, whatever, listened to a podcast, watched a YouTube video, and basically just like mashed, you know, mashed two buttons, mashed like the basic attack button and the counter button. I just mashed some buttons, you know, every time combat was happening. So like not a big problem, you know. You can kind of learn not to be upset with it. But the biggest thing that needed to be done, and well, it's a double thing, technically, you could say, that was absolutely failed in Mad Max 2015 is that the world looks actually way too clean. The world of Mad Max is very scrappy, and it is very raw. It is almost unforgivably, it's like out of its way brutal. And what happens when you run over a person in Mad Max? They just bounce off like a rag doll, like a test dummy, with, I think, almost no blood, a little bit of it, you know. Like Carmageddon, 27, 26 years ago, or 25, whatever. Boom, no, already. Did it better, you know, Carmageddon did it better. I think enemies legitimately needed to, if you run over somebody, especially at high speed, in the Mad Max universe, they needed to become a mist of blood. And all of the ruins and the world itself, it does not look neither particularly bleak nor particularly dark. It just kind of looks, you know, a little bit dilapidated, a little bit kind of like rusty. Like, yeah, you have the scarecrow, like kind of like effigies, right? Which basically are like these giant like totems that have like corpses incorporated into them. And you think, oh, well, that is so brutal and dark and whatever. Yeah, and then the way it's portrayed in the game, you basically had to play it in something like first person, really, in order to even see all those gory details, because you can barely see any of those details, first of all. And second, well, there's no blood on the sand. There's no, like, I don't know, giant craters of like black sand from like explosions, or maybe even sandy sand from nuclear explosions, you know. Sorry, glassy sand from nuclear explosions or anything like that. It doesn't look particularly busted, you know, this world. The world actually kind of looks pretty pure and clean. It's just that it's made out of like scrappy materials, right? And most of it is kind of rusted away, but it doesn't look particularly brutal. It doesn't look particularly metal. It just kind of looks too sterile in a way. And the world of Mad Max needed to have a bit more flair, you know. There needed to be a bit more like Conan the Barbarian in it. There needed to be a bit more like Warhammer in it, especially if you're going to make like a giant open world. It is definitely, if you're making a giant open sandbox game in the Mad Max universe, it needed to have more of a, like, The Witcher 3 treatment, you know, done to it. It needed to be, first of all, more metal, needed to be more memorable, and it needed to be more crafted rather than, you know, just the sandbox itself being created and then random shit being dropped into that world from the, like, asset folder. Unfortunately, that's what they did. And they didn't quite think of, you know, how can we craft this world so that it's actually epic and metal and brutal and memorable. Yeah, let's just have some rusted metal there, you know? Nah, dudes, nah. They couldn't even make outposts and, like, strongholds, like, really metal and aggressive and memorable and brutal, you know, in their architecture, and, like, I don't know, something shaped as a skull, something with, you know, giant, like, I don't know, arrows sticking out of the ground, you know, preventing anyone from ramming the walls of it. Like, no, everything just kind of looks like, we had some, whoop-de-doo. An overturned ship turned into, like, a house, turned into a stronghold, and this is our base now. Well, I'm not sure if that's Mad Max, really. I mean, it kind of is, but could we just not have a bit more of, like, the over-the-top side of the world? The over-the-top potential of the Mad Max universe, world, is completely not explored by 2015, and it's rather underwhelming. That's one of the best, I think, things that I can say about the world without outright saying that it's bad. It's underwhelming. It's very kind of like post-apocalyptic-y generic. It's, if you say somebody who, like, I don't know, graduated some kind of video game design college, right, and they know a little bit of 3D, like, modeling, and you are kind of like, we're making Mad Max, you know, open world game. You know what Mad Max is, right? It's like post-apocalypse, you know, desert wasteland, stuff like that. And they said, yeah, okay, cool. So you want, like, you know, like, dilapidated carcasses of, like, you know, ships and airplanes, you know, used as like houses and strongholds and whatever, bases. Yeah, okay, cool, yeah, I can do it. And they literally just did that, and there's, like, no flair added to it at all. Yeah. And another thing that's also part of the Mad Max universe, which was not entirely, which you cannot feel it as hard in the last two movies. I mean, I know that Furiosa wasn't really out yet, but Furiosa isn't even, like, all that bad of a movie, actually. I did enjoy quite a few elements of it. Yeah, of course, like, casting literally the tiniest woman in Hollywood as this giant, like, action hero is, like, absolutely ridiculous. You know, her hand would probably come off if she fired a gun. If she punched somebody with a hand, she would probably break hers, right? And if anyone probably, I don't know, poked her with the finger, they'd probably break a bone in her, right? So it's a bit weird, but we can assume that, you know, it's the Mad Max world, right? People are fucking tough in it. So, like, whatever. But yeah, in both Furiosa and Fury Road, honestly, I could feel some of the, like, retro elements of I don't know what you're doing, Annie, but you need to stop. You need to leave this area alone. There needed to be a bit more analogness to the aesthetic of the game. Instead, the game has slick, modern, like, video game, you know, interface. Everything is clean. Everything is super kind of, like, minimalistic. there needed to be a bit more. You know the difference between sitting down in a modern like Toyota Corolla and, you know, sitting in a, well, let's say even from the 90s, like a muscle car from the 90s, you know, older, more analog driven shit has its own feel, right? It's the difference between like leather and plastic. It's the difference between, you know, analog and digital. It's the difference between, I don't know, wood and fiberglass, right? And things in the Mad Max world, like the apocalypse happened not in the 2000s, right? The apocalypse happened in the late 20th century. And I think the aesthetic and the feel of the Mad Max universe is forever, in my head at least, tied to a bit of a kind of like timeless retro feel type of thing. Well, instead they like went, you know, modern style of slick everything, and nothing looks particularly like kind of like over the top and punky. You know, everything kind of looks very generic. It's a very contemporary, you know, looking post-apocalypse. It's not like the apocalypse, you know, out of the vision of the people from the 70s and the 80s. And like I said, the open world, generic as it is, I think on top of not being generic, it would have been really nice if the interface of the game, if the UI was not like this goddamn, you know, modern-y, the stupid modern minimalistic video game UI. Is that in and of itself, I think, would have been a problem. It would have been something I noticed, even if the game did not have the problem of, you know, generic contemporary apocalypse, you know, art style. Well, anyway, that's about it. It's a Batman combat system, absolutely horrible physics, and yeah, the world is. It's a very nice game. It's a very competent slop game to play while you're listening to a podcast. Absolutely, like sometimes I feel like playing something like that, right? And it's totally competent as something like that. But I do not understand why people take this game seriously. Or take it serious, rather, to be grammatically correct. I don't understand. Like, this is not something to be really talking about as if it's a real video game. No, it's a AAA slop sandbox. It just happened to take place in a world that's, you know, not as generic as like what Ubisoft does usually, but it's generic in its own way, at least in the way that they took a world, a universe that could have been much more, honestly. I don't know if you would want to like role play, like a role-playing game as Mad Max. But honestly, yeah, it needed to be something like The Witcher 3 pretty much. Even if in a more minimalistic, in a more kind of like Ubisoft sandbox type of thing, it still could have been more. And no, the dev didn't even really try. So yeah, but hey, it's a pretty competent sandbox, like for real. It's just, all things considered, there's really nothing special about it. Alrighty, bye bye.